How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, March 14th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an individual GOAT, greatest of all time, profile of Stephen Curry, the starting point guard of the Golden State Warriors. And my intention with these profiles is to let the numbers and the accomplishments and the accolades speak for themselves as I walk you through what this man has done in his career, just to give a little bit of context as to why he is a player that stands out amongst a lot of great players that play in the NBA. So if you're unfamiliar with Stephen Curry, he's probably the best probably one of the best shooters of the basketball you'll ever see in your life. He has NBA records, single season, single game. He's won championships. He's not a very big guy, not a very tall guy, in a league that favors very tall guys that are very strong and very physical. He kind of goes against the mold. He's about 6'3", 185 pounds. He's incredibly smart. He knows how to get open. He can read a floor incredibly well. He's a very smart point guard. He knows what he's doing. Great dribbler of the ball. Makes great shots, and he's probably one of the best players to watch in all of basketball history. So just to give a little bit of background, he's actually he's an NBA legacy. His dad, Del Curry, played in the NBA, played all over the place. He was born in Akron, and he grew up in Charlotte while Del was playing with the Charlotte Hornets. And Stephen Curry would establish himself as a good enough prospect to get signed at Davidson. And at Davidson, he was established himself as one of the best young players in the entire world. So in his very first season, in his freshman season, he would start 33 of his 34 games in a season where the Davidson Wildcats would end up going 29-5. They lost in the first round, but they did end up making it to the tournament. That season, Stephen Curry would go on to average 21.5 points, 4.6 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 1.8 steals, all while shooting 46% from the field, 40.8% from three, and 85.5% from the free throw line. I mean, the fact that he was doing it as a freshman is insane, but he wasn't really getting recognized the way that many people felt he should have been recognized. His second year at Davidson, his sophomore year, he would start all 36 games in a season where they would end up losing in the regional final. But Stephen Curry would end up having he ended up having one of the great runs that you don't really see in all of basketball. But I mean, like, losing in the Elite Eight, an incredible feat in itself. But in the season, he went on to average 25.9 points, which went up from 21.5. His rebounds stayed at about 4.6. His assists stayed at about 2.9. His steals went from about 1.8 to 2. His blocks went from 0.2 to 0.4. His shooting percentage went up from 46.3 to 48.3. His three-point percentage went up from 41 to 44%. His free throw percentage went up from 85 to 89% from the free throw line, and he was establishing himself as one of the better prospects in all of college basketball. And he decided to go back to Davidson, even though his sophomore year would be the last year he made the tournament. His junior year, he would start all 34 games in a season where Davidson they went 27-8, which wasn't as good of a year as the previous year, so they weren't good enough to make the tournament. But in that season, Steph Curry would up his averages to averaging 28.6 points. He kept his rebounds at about 4.4. He upped his assists from 2.9 to 5.6. He upped his steals to 2 to 2.5. He shot 45% from the field, which was a drop, but he still shot 45% from the field. From the 3-point line, he dropped from 43.9 to 38.7, but that's still incredibly high. And then his 89.4 dropped to 87.6. And even though he didn't make the tournament with Davidson, He established himself as a first-team All-American his junior year as opposed to being a second-team All-American his sophomore season. He went on to lead the entire NCAA in scoring as well, and he was the SoCon Player of the Year for the second year in a row. And this is before he would be taken in the 2009 NBA draft. And of course, by the time he left Davidson after his 3 years, he established himself as a good enough prospect to be taken in the lottery despite his small size. He was taken with the 7th overall pick in the 2009 NBA draft by the Golden State Warriors, the team that he plays for now. Surprisingly, he has not played for the Warriors. He's only played for the Warriors in his entire NBA career. So this leads us into Steph Curry's NBA career. So in 2009-2010, his age 21 season, he would start 77 of the 80 games in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 26-56 record. They had the 13th best record in the entire NBA. But in the season, Steph Curry would average 17.5 points, all on 36.2 minutes per game. He averaged 17.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.9 assists, 1.9 steals as well, while shooting 46% from the field, 43.7% from three, and 88% from the foul line, which of course is an incredible rookie season, which would go up as one of the best. He would go on to be named to the all-rookie first team, but of course that would be the only recognition that he would get for a bit in his career. So this would transition into his second season in the NBA. In his age 22 season in 2010-2011, he would start all 74 games in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 36-46 record. They won 10 more games than they did the previous season. That season, Steph Curry would up his point average from 17.5 to 18.6. His rebounds would drop from 4.5 to 3.9. His assists stayed at about 5.8. His steals dropped from 1.9 to 1.5. From the field, he shot 48%, which was an increase from 46%. His three-point numbers stayed at about 44.2%, and from the free throw line, he shot 93.4% from the foul line. This would be the first time that he would lead the NBA in free throw shooting. He would also be given the Sportsmanship Award as well in his second year in the NBA, while of course increasing all around the board while growing to be one of the best players in the NBA. His third season in the NBA was cut short due to ankle and foot injuries during the lockout season in 2011-2012 in his age 23 season. He would start 23 of 26 games in a season where the Golden State Warriors would end up 23-43. They had the 13th best record in the Western Conference. This would actually be the last time that the Golden State Warriors would miss the playoffs, and this is, of course, once they already got Klay Thompson and they were starting to build towards being one of the better teams. But in the 26 games he played, he averaged 28 minutes, and in those 28 minutes, in those games, he averaged 14.7 points, which of course was a decrease. His rebounds went down to 30.4. His assists went down to 5.3. He still stayed at about 1.5 still. He shot 49% from the field, 45.5% from three, the highest percentage from three he'd shoot in his career up until that point, and he was shooting 80.9% from the foul line. But I guess after that, the only season that he would really miss a lot of games from due to injury would be in the midst of his championship run. So this would transition into his age 24 season. In 2012-2013, Steph Curry started all 78 games in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 47-35 record, which was a 24 game increase or a 24 win increase from the previous season. And this would see them jump 7 places in the West from where they were from where they were previously. In the season, Stephen Curry would average 38.2 minutes a game, which is 10 more than he did the previous season and the most he'd ever average in a season in his NBA career. He upped his point average to 22.9, the highest he'd ever score in his NBA career. He upped his rebounds from 3.4 to 4 rebounds per game. He upped his assists from 5.3 to 6.9, the first time he'd ever averaged at least 6 assists a game. He increased his steals from 1.5 to 1.6, not like crazy. From the field, he shot 45% from the field, which was a drop from 49% the previous year. He shot 45.3% from the field, which was the highest he put up in a full season, which was insane. And also that season, he shot 90% from the free throw line, which is the second time that he's ever shot 90% from the free throw line. This is the first time he led the NBA in 3-pointers made and 3-pointers attempted, as he made 272 on the season. As I think he set a single season record, even though he was not named an All-Star in 2013. But in that season, they would go on to beat the Nuggets in the first round, and then they would go on to lose to the Spurs in the conference semifinals when the Spurs were making their run against the Miami Heat at the time. So that's what happened then. So we're going to transition into Stephen Curry's age 25 season, because up until then, Steph Curry had never been an all-star, but he was building his team to being one of the best playoff teams, and he was slowly building his reputation as being one of the best overall players in the NBA. So this would transition into his age 25 season. In 2013-14, he would start all 78 games that he would play, in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 51-31 record, which is a 4-win increase from the previous season. But they still kept the 6th record, or the 6th seed in this season. Steph Curry would increase his scoring numbers from 22.9 to 24 per game. His rebounds would go up from 4 to 4.3. His assists went up from 6.9 to 8.5. That's the most assists that he'd ever averaged in a season in his career. He kept his steals at about 1.6, the 5th season in a row that he'd average at least a steal and a half in his career. He would shoot 47% from the field, about average at that point as to what he was doing. He shot 42.4% from 3, which is the lowest he shot in a season in his career, but 42.4 is still incredibly high for any player. He shot 88.5% from the free throw line as well. And he was also named to his very first All-Star game, and in 2013-14, they would go on to lose in the first round in 7 to the Los Angeles Clippers, and this would be the last season that Steph Curry was not this would be the last season that he wasn't a champion. He would also be named to the All-NBA second team for the first time in his career as well. And at the same time, in 2013-14, he wouldn't make more threes than he would the previous year, but he would take more threes. He made 261 threes on 615 attempts, leading the league in three-point attempts for the second year in a row. So after losing in the first round to the Clippers, this would transition into Steph Curry's age 26 season, the second year that he would make the All-Star team. And in 2014-15, he would start all 80 games in a season, or all 80 games that he would play in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 67-15 record, which is a 16-win increase from the previous season. And the previous season was they won 50 games. So they finished with the best record in the entire Western Conference. In this season itself, Stephen Curry would see his minutes per game go down about 4 minutes, from 36 to 32 minutes. He would see his points per games average stay from about 24 to about 23.8. His rebounds stayed at about the same at about 4.3. His assist numbers went down from 8.5 to 7.7. His steal numbers went up from 1.6 to 2. From the field, he went up from 47.1 to 48.7. From three, his percentages went up from 42.4 to 44.3. From the foul line, his free throw percentage went up from 88.5 to 91.4, and he led the league in free throw percentage for the second time in his career. And then from three, he would go on to make 286 three-pointers in that season, and on 646 made three-pointers attempted, which would be personal records for him in both categories. In this season, 2014-15, he would go on to be named the MVP for the very first time in his career. He would go on to be named an All-Star for the second time in his career. He would be named to the All-NBA first team for the very first time in his career, as of course the Golden State Warriors became as they were the best team in basketball, and he was the face of that team, and he was dropping a lot of three-pointers. This was the third season in a row in which he had taken the league by storm and had led the entire NBA in three-pointers made. And like I said, with this being his second year being an All-Star, he would go on to make a deep run into the playoffs. They would beat the Pelicans in the first round. They'd sweep them. This is when they had Anthony Davis. They beat the Grizzlies in the second round in 6. They beat the Rockets in 5, and this is when James Harden was really starting to take off. And then they went on to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in 6, and this is when the Cleveland Cavaliers were missing Kevin Love, because Kevin Love got his arm ripped out of his socket by Kelly Olynyk, and then Kyrie Irving twisted his ankle in Game 1. LeBron James is up against a very tough Warriors team, but the Warriors were able to pull off a very good win. Andre Iguodala was named the Finals MVP. Bob Myers was named the Executive of the Year. And this would be a great year to cap off Steph Curry's first MVP season. And this was all the way back in 2015. And this was almost 6 years ago. So that's where Steph Curry was about at that time. So this transitions into Steph Curry's 2015-2016 year, which would be his age 27 season, his 7th season in the league. He would start all 79 of the games he would play in a season where the Golden State Warriors would win 73 games, the most wins any team has ever won in any NBA season ever. It was a 6-win increase from the previous season, and of course, they finished with the best record in the West. During that season, Steph Curry would increase his minutes per game average from about 32 to 34, which is not that many minutes for the numbers he put up. He averaged 30.1 points per game the first time in his career, the only time in his career he's ever averaged at least 30 points per game, and that was an increase from 23.8 the previous season. His rebounds per game went up from 4.3 to 5.4. His assists per game went down from 7.7 to 6.7. His steals per game stayed from about 2 to about 2.1. This would be the second and the final time, the most recent time he's averaged at least 2 steals per game in his career, and the only time he's led the league in steals per game. At the same time, he was shooting 50% from the field. The only time in his career he shot 50% from the field. He shot 45.4% from 3, which goes down as one of his best, because I guess if we're comparing it to his third year in the league where he didn't even play a full season. So out of all of his full seasons, that is the highest percentage he's ever shot from 3. He also shot 90.8% from the foul line. He led the league in free throw percentage for the 3rd season in a row. This will go down as a 50-40-90 season, while he led the league in steals and averaged 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 6.5 assists per game. While the Golden State Warriors won 73 games, he will go down as the first ever unanimous MVP in NBA history. And this would be the season he will go on to be named an All-Star for the 3rd time in his career. He'll be named to the All-NBA first team for the 2nd time in his career. He will be named the NBA scoring champion, of course, for the first time. And this year, the Warriors would make a deep run into the playoffs. This year, they would beat the Rockets in the first round 4-1. They beat the Trailblazers in the conference semis in 5. They beat the Thunder in 7, and this is when they were trailing 3-2 at one point. But then Klay Thompson would help them come back, and they would beat the Thunder, and then they would lose to the Cleveland Cavaliers this time in 7. And then when LeBron James put up quite possibly the greatest NBA Finals performance of all time, but following that. But following that, the Warriors would actually add Kevin Durant to their ranks, and then they would get even better for 2016-2017. So transitioning into Steph Curry's 4th All-Star season, into his age 28 season, his 8th season in the league, 2016-17. He would start all 79 games he would play in a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 67-15 record, the same record that they had the first time that they won the championship, which was 6 less wins than the previous season. This year, Stephen Curry would he would average 1 less minute per game than he would his MVP season. His points per game's average would drop from 30.1 to 25.3. His rebounds per game dropped from 5.4 to 4.5. His assists stayed at about the same at about 6.6. His steals dropped from 2.1 to 1.8. And from the field, he shot 46.8% from the field, which he dropped from the previous year. He shot 41.1% from the three-point line, which is the lowest he's ever shot in a full season in his NBA career. But it's still incredibly high, 41% from three. And he was still go to shoot 89.8% from the free throw line, as of course he was sharing minutes with Kevin Durant, who would also go on to be a first-team All-NBA player. But in 2017, he would go on to be named to the All-NBA second team for the second time in his NBA career. Like I said, he would be named to his 4th All-Star team in his career, and then this time they would make it back into the playoffs. They would beat the Trailblazers in the first round. They'd sweep the Trailblazers. They'd sweep the Jazz in the second round. They'd sweep the Spurs in the conference finals. So up until they got to the finals, they had swept virtually everybody. They lost, I believe, in the first game, or in the third game to LeBron, but they won 4-1. They won the series in 5. Kevin Durant was named the Finals MVP, and this was also the season that Draymond Green was named the Defensive Player of the Year. Bob Myers was named the Executive of the Year, and the Golden State Warriors had won their second championship in 3 years, and Stephen Curry was one of the main players on both of them. And they were still a team that was at the very top of their tower. So that's where the Golden State Warriors were in 2017. So this is transitioning into 2018, or transitioning into the 2017-2018 season. In that season, he would start 51 games in a season where the Golden State Warriors would go 58-24. They would win 9 less games than the previous season, and they would finish with the second best record in the Western Conference. Kevin Durant was still on the team, so of course they had nothing to worry about. They just dealt with a little bit of fatigue in the season. Steph Curry would average 1 less minute per game. He averaged 32 minutes a game. His points per game would go up from 25.3 to 26.4. His rebounds would go up from 4.5 to 5.1. His assists would drop from 6.6 to 6.1. His steals would drop from about 1.8 to 1.6. His field goal percentage would jump up from 46.8 to 49.5. His three-point percentage would jump up from 41.1 to 42.3, and his free throw percentage would jump up from 89.8 to 92.1, the second highest free throw percentage he'd ever shot in his career. And it would be the 4th time in his career, and the most recent time he had led the NBA in free throw shooting percentage. And at this point, he would go on to be named to his 5th consecutive All-Star game in his first 9 seasons in the NBA. Naturally, he would go on to be named to the All-NBA third team. That'd be the only time he's ever been named to the All-NBA third team. And this year, the Warriors would make yet another run into the playoffs. They would beat the Spurs in the first round 4-1. They beat the Pelicans in the conference semis 4-1. They beat the Rockets in the conference finals 4-3, and this is when Chris Paul got injured at the very end. And then they ended up sweeping the Cleveland Cavaliers once they made it to the NBA Finals. Kevin Durant would win his second consecutive Finals MVP. And as the starting point guard, Stephen Curry would be we would win the championship on 3 of the most recent 4 teams that he played on. And then the year that he didn't win the championship, he was 1 win away, and he only lost to LeBron James, putting up the greatest NBA Finals performance quite possibly ever. So that's where Stephen Curry was at the end of the 2018 season. And following that, the Warriors decided they would, or at least with Kevin Durant, they decided they were going to run it back for one last ride. So for 2018-2019, in his age 30 season, Steph Curry would start all 69 games, and a season where the Golden State Warriors would finish with a 57-25 record, which was 1 less when they won the previous season. And they finished with the best record in the Western Conference, by the way. That year, Steph Curry would up his minutes per game average to 33.8. He increased his points per game average from 26.4 to 27.3. His rebounds stayed at about 5.3. His assists dropped from 6.1 to 5.2. His steals dropped from 1.6 to 1.3. From the field, he shot 47.2% from the field, which is a drop from 49.5. He shot 43.7% from 3, which was an increase from 42.3. And then from the foul line, he dropped from 92.1 to 91.6, which is still incredibly high. He would be named to his 6th consecutive All-Star team in his career. He'll be named to the All-NBA first team for the 3rd time in his career at the same time. And once the Golden State Warriors made the playoffs, they would go on to beat the Clippers in the first round in 6. They beat the Rockets in 6 in the second round. They beat the Blazers in the conference finals when Damian Lillard made that incredible run through the playoffs. And then they went on to lose in the NBA finals to the Raptors, because that's when Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant went on to get hurt. And that would end up being a big blow to the Warriors, but the Raptors would end up being the team that won the 2019 NBA Finals, and that would end Stephen Curry's 5-year run of making it to the NBA Finals. That was the last time he's made it to the NBA Finals, but 2019 was literally 2 years ago. And this would transition into Stephen Curry's most recent full season, because I guess not counting the season in 2019-20, he would only play 5 games, as I guess that season was plagued with injury too. Klay Thompson decided he was going to sit out, and he decided that he had to get surgery to repair his broken second metacarpal. It was supposed to be a 3-month surgery, but it ended up lasting a lot longer than he thought it would, so he didn't play any of the season. So he played 5 games, and in those 5 games, he would average maybe 27 minutes. He averaged 20.8 points, 5.2 rebounds, 6.6 assists, and about a steal per game. Shooting 40% from the field, 24% from 3. And he went on to make all of his free throws that season, but not much went on. And the Warriors would go on to miss the playoffs completely, and they performed so bad that they got the number 2 overall pick in the 2020 NBA draft. So right now, looking at where Steph Curry and the Warriors are right now, as of right now, we are in the middle of the 2020-2021 season. It is Sunday, March 14th. Today, Steph Curry is turning 33. This season, he started all 36 games he's played in a season where the Golden State Warriors are currently sitting at 19-19. That is the 9th best record in the Western Conference. In the playoff picture, they are sitting a game and a half behind the 8th place Dallas Mavericks on the outside of the playoff picture looking in, as they've lost their last 4 and they've lost 6 of their last 10. They and the Memphis Grizzlies are both sitting at 500, and they both sit 3 games ahead of the 11th place New Orleans Pelicans and the 12th place Oklahoma City Thunder. Their next game coming up is going to be today at 4 o'clock as they host the Utah Jazz, the best team in the West, a team that's in the position that Steph Curry used to be in. But I think with all that said, looking at what Steph Curry's doing right now, and in the 36 games, he's averaging 29.3 points per game, which is the second highest points per game average he's had since his MVP season. He's averaging 5.4 rebounds, which is among the best rebounding seasons he's had. I think tied with 2016 for his best. He's averaging 6.2 assists per game, which isn't his best, but it's averaging about what he does. And he's averaging over a steal per game, averaging 1.3. From the field, he's shooting 47.5%. He's shooting 40.6% from three, which is one of the lowest he's putting up in a full season. And he's also shooting 93% from the free throw line. So of course he's having an incredible season. And I think that with that said, I think his numbers, his accolades, his achievements speak for themselves. And I want to wish him a happy 33rd birthday, as I think he is truly one of the greatest players that the game of basketball has ever seen. And I think he is still a player that I would consider elite going into the 2021 year. And with that said, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to all 31 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well. And I will have an individual profile tomorrow for Paul Pogba, the elite midfielder starting for Manchester United in France tomorrow. But with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I will get to you tomorrow on Monday, March 15th, once all of today's exhibitions are done. Thanks once again for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.